What we've seen with many of the scams that have gone on here is that mathematics actually underpins and makes these scams work, from the pyramid scam and why that's never going to work because of this geometric growth, this power growth in the numbers, to the ideas of this game here, where people aren't really thinking about the probabilities and aren't really thinking about the money, where that money is coming from that's being fed back into them, to scams where you manipulate people's calculators, to scams where you're able to mysteriously predict football matches, and you're not actually doing that. Again, you're using this kind of probability distribution in there. Lots of scams use those sort of mathematical techniques to make money. There are other scams which are out there in the world that use maths in some really clever and cunning ways. There's something called the salami slice con. The salami slice con works in banks. So banks, when they're calculating interest on money, when they're moving money around accounts, round everything to the nearest penny. So what happened in the past was that some crooked bank employees who were working on the computer systems set the system up so that any fraction of a penny that would normally be rounded down got taken away. So that decimal point got taken away, 0.3 of a pence, and it got added into another account somewhere. So like a salami, where you're slicing just very, very, very thin bits off. Every time a transaction was happening, you were calculating a percentage of an interest and you were rounding down that money. That money was then, that tiny little fraction of a value was being put into another account. And over a period of time, given the millions of transactions that banks do, the money in that account accumulated to massive amounts. It became real money, which they were then able to withdraw. And the question there is, where has that money come from? That money has actually come from errors in the mathematics, just rounding errors in the mathematics. And so the banks wouldn't really have missed that money because they were just rounding down anyway. It only existed in this kind of virtual computer space. And yet, if you took all those tiny little bits of decimal points and added them all together, you got hundreds and thousands of pounds. So there's a very interesting question there about what the relationship is between mathematics and the real world. And in that case, there's something very intriguing that money that exists these days, not necessarily as coins, but as digits inside computer programs, that people can go in there and manipulate those kinds of pieces of data to make real money from basically a rounding error. There's another classic scam that was run and actually required the changing of the law in gambling casinos. And do you all know what roulette is? Roulette's the game where there's a big wheel with lots of numbers on it, and you spin the wheel and you roll the ball into it, and the ball drops into a particular hole, and if the hole is the number that you've bet on, then you win the money. There's a very old scam from that called clocking the wheel. So it turns out that if you go into a casino and you spend a lot of time in casinos, you can actually begin to work out roughly which parts of the wheel the ball is going to drop into. Why? Because a particular croupier or a particular roulette spinner will spin with a particular speed. It will be characteristic of them, and then they'll throw the ball in at a particular time, and the ball can kind of spin round, and eventually you can increase your probability of being right by watching for long enough to see where the ball is likely to fall. Also, over a period of time, wheels become slightly unbalanced, and that unbalancedness in there means that it slightly tilts, which means the ball is more likely to kind of roll down to one side or to another side. And people became very skilled in being able to do this, clocking the wheel, working out where the ball went. So a series of computer programmers from I think Eastern Europe somewhere moved in to try and improve on this scam, and they used camera phones. And what they were able to do was, just by having a video link, they were able to actually film the ball as the ball was thrown into the wheel. And there's a very short period of time during which, when the ball is spinning around the wheel, you're still allowed to place bets. And they started to make a killing. They started to win constantly, and people were very suspicious about this. And what they were able to do was, they had a computer program that could calculate the speed of the ball as it went in, and then using mathematics and a model of the physics of the wheel, was able to predict where the ball was most likely to fall within the wheel as it went round. So They filmed it as the ball went in. It's actually transmitted to a van outside where they had a large, high-powered computer. It was able to then run all the various calculations in there and tell them roughly where the ball was going to land in the wheel. And they had just enough time to get that sent back to them to be able to fix the system in there. And the legislation at the time said that you could be accused of cheating in a casino if you physically tampered with the wheel. So what people used to do in the old days was they'd put a bit of gum or something under parts of the wheel to make it maybe a little bit stickier than other bits to it. But you had to physically tamper with it. And after this particular scam was exposed, the legislation was changed so that the ability to be accused of kind of stealing and scamming in a casino was brought about by just you videoing the wheel as well. So instead of having to physically touch it, you could just simply video what was going on in the system, and from that you could be accused of actually cheating at the game, because it no longer becomes a game of luck and skill, it becomes a game of who's got the biggest computer and the best mathematical model. So mathematics is used all the time for naughty purposes as well as being used for very good purposes as well. And I'm hoping that today I've given you an opportunity to try some of these scams for yourself, to understand a little bit about how they operate, so that in the future you won't be scammed. So the moral of this tale is, as with all scams and all cons, if it seems too good to be true, then it probably isn't true. The confidence trick works by giving you something that you want, either appealing to your greed or to your vanity, or sometimes actually to believing that you can help lots and lots of different people by doing this. In some way it appeals to you, and it just seems an amazing opportunity you just can't give up on. It ties into human psychology, and very often there's a very strong mathematical principle behind that, which is hidden because most people don't bother to do the maths. So if you're not going to be scammed in the future, be aware. Also, do the maths, work it through. That way you're less likely to be fooled.